Chapter 225. Scalia 2. Sorry for the late introduction, Dior said with a deep sigh after taking off his helmet once Eugene and the others entered the tent and sat down. The face that was revealed belonged to a young, beautiful man, and he looked as young as he sounded. My name is Dior Hyman. I am a member of the Violent Tide Knights and an aide to Princess Scalia, continued Dior. Hyman. Cyan was the first to respond. After blurting out the name, he stared intently at Dior's face for a while. Are you perhaps Sir Ortis Hyman's one? I'm his son, answered Dior. Ortis Hyman was the name of the first knight, the commander of the Violent Tide Knights, and the one who stood at the peak of the Shimuan's 12 finest. Eugene also searched his memory after hearing Dior's introduction. He recalled hearing the name while receiving education at the house of the Lionheart clan's main branch. If his memory served correctly, Dior was the same age as the late Hewitt, 2 years older than Eugene and the twins. The Hyman family was one of the most prestigious, skilled families of knights in Shimuan, and Ortis Hyman was a name that was always brought up when discussing the continent's finest warriors. As a result, the children of the Lionheart clan were cautioned to be wary of the one named Dior ever since they were young. They said he was heads and shoulders above the others ever since he was young, Eugene recalled. With their interests piqued, similar to Cyan, Seal and Eugene also observed Dior. He was clearly outstanding for his age, but it only seemed so because Eugene's standards were too high. Truthfully, the aura he emitted was great enough for him to be considered a member of the Violent Tide Knights. However, he felt a little lacking considering that he was the son of Shimuan's first knight. Leo, Alchester's son, was a genius even by Eugene's standards, and even Cyan and Seal were top talents of the Lionheart family, though they were overshadowed by Eugene. But what about Dior? Indeed, he seemed strong and talented, but it wasn't astoundingly so. Well, I'm sure what's on the surface isn't everything. When Eugene had seen the Shimuan duo through his flame, Dior had noticed his presence, while Scalia failed to do so. Their gazes had even met, so Eugene did not want to judge Dior's skills hastily. I ask for your understanding regarding Princess Scalia's attitude, said Dior. Scalia had acted violently while leaning on her royal authority, but Dior, her aide, did not attempt to follow her example. But he wasn't dismissing Scalia either. Instead, he continued taking glances at Scalia to check her condition. As evidenced by earlier conversation, Scalia didn't seem to be in her right mind. She was chewing on her chapped lips while pulling on her hair, wrapping it around her finger. Dior gave a deep sigh before parting his lips. Princess. Stop, Dior. I know what you are trying to say, so don't bother saying it. My royal self will not do as you say, responded Scalia. But Princess, don't you feel that the symptoms of your disease are quite serious? Asked Dior, trying to sound rational. Symptoms? Disease. I am just tired from a lack of sleep. How could you call this a disease? Asked Scalia, glaring at Dior with bloodshot eyes. I am completely fine. The climate of this land is vastly different from that of Shimuan, which is why I haven't completely adapted yet. Once I rest, I will be well in a few days at the latest. So, Dior, stop yourself from speaking any words that I don't want to hear. In the face of Scalia's stubbornness, Dior couldn't think of anything to say. My royal self will walk around for a while. You young lions of the Lionheart clan, if you wish to go with me, you may stay. But if you are planning to disturb me, leave quickly. Saying so, Scalia leaped up from her seat. The hood of her helmet fell and covered her face. Dior quickly stood up and attempted to follow her, but she turned her head and glared at him in response. Do not follow me. My royal self will not go far. I feel distracted and dizzy, so I just want to walk around by myself for a little while. But I know that you are concerned, but I will not listen to you, said Scalia in a sharp voice before jerking away. Dior stood in place for a moment, staring at Scalia's back with worry. She must be very sensitive, said Cyan after a moment. He was trying his best to keep his expression under control, but a mark had already been left on Cyan's tender heart. Even though it had been well over a year since talk of marriage between him and Princess Scalia began, he had been called all sorts of mean names instead of a kind greeting. Even the King of Ruhr recognized me and patted me on the shoulder, Sin mused, dejected. It felt as if his heart had been broken before he even got to meet her properly. The wound in Cyan's heart only widened with each passing moment, causing his shoulders to droop. The princess suffered from mild insomnia even when we were back in Shimuan, said Dior with a bitter smile after taking a seat once more. As is the case with these kinds of illnesses, the princess' insomnia is a disease of the heart. Still, she managed to sleep, albeit very lightly when she was in Shimuan. However, she has barely slept at all after we've arrived in this snowy field. I can help with that, Christina spoke up for the first time. I apologize for not introducing myself earlier. My name is Christina Rogerus of the Holy Empire. The saint candidate? Asked Dior. Yes. You said you could help, but what exactly do you mean by that? Asked Dior. Of the divine magic I know, one of the spells calms the uneasy mind and leads the restless mind to a peaceful sleep. Sir Dior, as you said, most cases of insomnia are diseases of the heart that are hard to cure, but I'm sure my divine magic could help to alleviate some of the princess burdens, answered Christina. She wasn't thinking of the benefits that would come from helping the princess. Although she had received coercive education, Christina was still a priestess. It was her duty to lead the suffering to the peace of light. Even Anise had been extremely delinquent, especially considering her role as the saint, but had never hesitated to help others in need. It didn't seem like insomnia was the problem, said Eugene. That's what she said just now. The princess said she could fall asleep whenever she wanted. Indeed, Princess Scalia had brought up the topic of taking a break. But immediately after taking a seat and feeling languid, she resisted. She had chewed on her lips, ripped her hair and forced her eyes open. Moreover, she had gone for a walk, which Eugene suspected was to shake off the feeling of drowsiness. I dare not speak easily of the princess situation, said Dior, looking out the tent with an awkward expression. The snow and the wind were getting stronger and Scalia could no longer be seen. The Princess Knight was a nickname that acted as the symbol representing the kingdom of knights, Shimuan and its royal family. Although it was true that Scalia rose to the position of the vice-commander of the Violent Tide Knights partially because of her status, it was also undeniable that she was skilled enough to be recognized within the Violent Tide Knights as well. Even if there were monsters that could threaten her in the depths of the Lehanjar snowy mountains, she certainly would not run into any problems in the snowy field they were currently traversing. I must go find the princess, Dior said after a brief silence. He knew better than anyone how skilled she was, but that didn't mean he could simply leave her alone. Scalia had been acting strange lately and this too was something Dior knew all too well. We will get going then, said Eugene before quickly rising from his seat. But he realized belatedly that everyone except Dior was staring at him with surprise. Yes. I look forward to seeing you in Lehane, Dior responded calmly. He was the only one who seemed unfazed by Eugene's response. Dior exited through the tent's flap, and Cyan stared at Eugene with a dumbfounded expression. We're leaving? Why? What do you mean why? Why not, you punk? What else would we do besides leave? Asked Eugene. Well, Sir Dior looked a little troubled, so we could help them out and, mumbled Cyan. What is there to help him with? It's not like Princess Scalia is a child. She only went out for a short walk, so why should we help search for someone we have nothing to do with? Eugene asked, exasperated. That's true, but, muttered Cyan with drooping shoulders. Wouldn't Princess Scalia be in need of my help? Asked Christina. I told you earlier, right? It's not that Princess Scalia can't sleep. It's that she's not sleeping on purpose. I don't know exactly what it is, but she's not normal. Eugene is right, Seal piped in, nodding. Princess Scalia is not normal. Even now she almost attacked us, right? It means she's incapable of distinguishing what's right in front of her eyes. She's not in the right state of mind. However, it's even more annoying because she's Shimuan's princess. So even if we are the Lionhearts, there's nothing we can do against her. Christina and Cyan did not argue any further after hearing Seal and Eugene's opinions. Can I come out now? Mare asked from inside Eugene's cloak. Instead of answering, however, Eugene tightened the cloak around him. But it wasn't out of spite. Mare realized Eugene's intent and let out a small, surprised sound. Oh, Christina exclaimed as well. Although she could not read Eugene's mind, Anise had spoken from inside her mind. Christina placed her hand on the flail on her waist with a stiff expression. They found themselves in an even stronger snowstorm once they exited the tent. Abel took the lead once more and the group began cutting through the blizzard. Don't get too far from the group, Eugene cautioned. It wasn't their first time traveling through a snowstorm, but the warning felt quite unusual for Cyan and Seal. However, they didn't ask any questions. Eugene's voice was as cold as the swirling snow. The finality in it meant the table wasn't open for any discussions or questions. The following silence only intensified the tension. Cyan took off Geddon's shield from his back and placed it on his left arm, though he couldn't give an exact reason for his behavior. Seal grabbed the pommel of the Phantom Rain sword, which was hidden inside her cloak. Eugene was the first to sense the change. But instead of speaking out, he activated the white flame formula. Cyan and Seal halted their steps at the sudden activation of mana. Whoosh! Christina called on the light and pushed the blizzard away. Wings of light unfolded brilliantly to encompass their surroundings, and a large cross enveloped in a circle appeared beneath their feet. Eugene turned around. The snow did not invade the holy formation, and he could see that someone stood on the far side of the blizzard outside the circle. It was none other than Princess Scalia. "Some things," mumbled Cyan. He stared at Scalia while holding Geddon's shield. Although the blizzard was raging quite strongly, he could make out her face if he focused hard enough. Something was wrong. It was similar to what he had felt before, but Scalia was even stranger now. Her eyes were rather dim and out of focus earlier, but now they had no focus at all. Even though Scalia's eyes were open, they were utterly devoid of any light, as if they belonged to the dead. "Where is Sir Dior? Pay for your sins with death." Scalia roared before Cyan could finish. Her face was displayed inside her helmet, and dark blue mana wrapped and soared from her figure. Boom! The snow around her scattered and evaporated in an instant. Scalia charged forward through the blizzard. "Princess!" However, Dior ran forward and blocked her path before anything else happened. He opened his arms wide in front of Scalia and shouted in a bewildered voice. Please stop. They are from the Lion Heart. Do you dare to stand in the way of my royal self? You are not worthy," roared Scala before swinging down at Dior without hesitation. She wasn't attacking to threaten him but rather trying to cleave his body in half. Dior belatedly drew his own sword in surprise. Clang! Although he had been late to draw his blade, Dior managed to deflect Scalia's blow without any difficulty. Moreover, his posture wasn't disturbed even the slightest, even though he had received her blow from the bottom. "Ah!" Cyan stepped forward to help, but Eugene raised his arm and blocked his path. Cyan looked at Eugene with shock. "What? Why?" "Hold on a second," said Eugene without any further explanation. Boom! Another explosion resounded. Scalia had swung down her sword like an axe with a grimace, and Dior received her blow once more without backing down. He was quite skilled. Eugene had assumed that Dior had been hiding his skills earlier, and as expected, Dior showed prowess befitting or even greater than what was expected from the son of Shimuan's first knight to block Scalia's fierce offensive. It was difficult to estimate exactly how much mana he was outputting, but it was pretty clear that Dior had an advantage over the vice-commander of the Violent Tide Knights when it came to swordlight. Scalia was out of her mind, but her blade was not dulled by the influence on her mind. Instead, Scalia was wielding her sword with all her might precisely because she was not in her right mind. But even so, she could not best Dior. Ugh! Dior was genuinely at a loss. Although he had intervened in a hurry, he had no idea why Princess Scalia was running rampant. The only thing that was clear was that Princess Scalia did not recognize the Lion Hearts or him. "You dirty scumbag pirates! Have you followed my royal self out of the sea all the way to this white land? Aren't you the mercenary I killed earlier? How is it that you're still alive?" That's right. You must have sold your soul to an evil demon," shouted Scalia. It was impossible to understand what she was saying at all. That wasn't the only problem either. Dior didn't want to expose himself to the young lions of the Lionheart clan. However, it wasn't as if he could leave Princess Scalia to turn her sword against them either. Let's focus on subduing her, Dior thought fast. There would be no end in sight if he only focused on defending. As such, Dior was left with no choice but to come to a compromise. He would properly subdue Princess Scalia. After making up his mind, he tightened his grip on his sword. He made one last eye contact with Princess Scalia as if to ask for her understanding. He could see her dull eyes nesting inside her helmet, her lifeless, dim eyes. Princess Scal. Dior was never given an opportunity to finish. The distance between him and Princess Scalia was short enough for proper eye contact, and as soon as he peered into her eyes, it felt as if the distance between them had shortened. Had it really? No, the only thing that had approached him was the gaze. Her eyes. Dior stiffened up like a stone statue. He found himself unable to control his body, let alone wield his sword. This body is too weak. He heard a voice coming from inside Scalia's helmet. The voice belonged to her, but the one speaking wasn't Princess Scalia. Or is the host too weak? Well, there's nothing to be expected from a low-ranking incubus. Scalia's exit helmet opened wide, and she raised her head as her coral hair spilled out like a waterfall. Countless stars were born in her lightless eyes. This was forced slumber, one Rick cascade. There were no warning signs nor any wavering mana. As soon as the target was captured in sight, they could be forced to slumber at will. It was a power that any high-ranking night demon could use, and she was stronger than any of the night demons. In her case, she could force almost anyone to sleep. The activation of the ability signaled the end. Just like its name, One Rick Cascade, the one afflicted would be led to a world of endless, cascading dreams the moment they fell asleep. "Oh my," said Scalia with surprise. She had planned to put everyone to sleep but had clearly failed. Only 2 people had fallen asleep and her skill had been interrupted as well. The 2 people on their knees were simply sleeping, not affected by One Rick Cascade. Divine barrier. It sure is amazing, but I didn't think something made quick and dirty could block me like this. The one speaking was the queen of the night demons, Noir Giabella. She painted a smile on Scalia's face while tilting her head. Although she gave a relaxed smile, Noir's mind was turning non-stop. Her main body was in the Forest of Dark Shadows, located far from here in Helmuth. She could be here solely because she was using the body of a low-ranking incubus, one active in Rosrock, as a vessel. As a result, Noir wasn't capable of using the full extent of her power nor her demon eye of fantasy. But she had never imagined she would need it in the first place. Bullying Scalia in her dreams had only been a mischievous prank, though she had eventually taken control of Scalia's body after she fell asleep. I was going to lead them to their dreams and have a taste. Noir's smile grew deeper. "That's funny," she said. Even at this moment she was continuing to use forced slumber. However, Christina and Eugene were unaffected. "What are you?" asked Noir with curiosity. Chapter 226, Scalia 3. It felt as if his head had frozen over. Eugene strained his eyes and clenched his fists tightly. Forced slumber, the power of the night demons, allowed the night demons to put to sleep any targets in their sight. It was closer to an intense suggestion rather than magic, and it was a power that every night demon possessed. Naturally, the actual strength of the skill varied depending on the level of the night demon themselves. Low-level night demons would need to stare into the eyes of their target for quite some time before they could put them to sleep, so the inferior succubus of Bolero Street abetted their attempts with additional things like drugs and alcohol. However, when it came to night demons that were mid-level or stronger, they could push their target into sleep with nothing but sharing a gaze and holding a conversation. As their name suggested, night demons dug into the dreams of their opponents. So it wasn't an exaggeration to say that what distinguished them from each other was how fast they could put their opponents to sleep. The opponent Eugene was faced with at this moment was powerful enough to immediately force sleep with a simple eye contact, and on several people as well. It was from quite a distance as well, and with not even proper eye contact with everyone. Moreover, it wasn't as if Eugene's group had been unprepared and defenseless either. Christina's divine power had grown exponentially after Anis's awakening, and the variety and power of divine magic she could wield had also increased. Even so, she had failed to completely prevent forced slumber. It was partially because Christina wasn't as strong as Anis in her prime, but also because the existence in control of Scalia's body was of a different class altogether. Noir Giabella, the queen of the night demons. Compared to 300 years ago, she's more. Eugene could feel the inside of his fists throbbing. His fingertips were digging into his palm and causing it to bleed, but it couldn't be helped. He felt as if he would instantly collapse into sleep if he didn't force himself to focus like this. Noir's forced slumber had not been this strong 300 years ago. In fact, Noir's forced slumber had never succeeded in penetrating through Anis's barrier. As such, Noir had resorted to other methods to harass Hamel and his comrades in the past. The most common tactic had been to ambush them. First, she would attempt to overpower Hamel's party with sheer numbers of night demons. Then she would use her demon eye of fantasy to change their realities and dreams. But what about now? Eugene glared at Scalia, or rather Noir. Her eyes were filled with countless stars. Her eyes were representative of Noir, but this wasn't the demon eye of fantasy. Recalling how she had grumbled about having to use a low-level vessel, it could be deduced that it wasn't even Noir's true body that had taken control of Scalia. And yet her forced slumber was so powerful. There was an obvious explanation. 300 years was a long time, and Noir had not been sleeping around. Noir Giabella had grown powerful to even surpass her nickname as the Queen of the Night Demons. She was now as strong as the Demon Kings from before. I should have killed her 300 years ago, thought Eugene regretfully. We should have killed her 300 years ago. The same thought was going through Anis's mind as well. Noir had stood at the peak of the demon folk 300 years ago. No one had expected her to have pursued greater strength and achieved it. Sure, there had not been many suitable opportunities to kill her, but still, both Anis and Eugene regretted that they had not pushed themselves further to eliminate her. You're being vigilant? How cute, Noir said with a wide smile. She was still leaning her head to the side like a curious cat and continued speaking while twirling Scalia's red hair with her fingers. You don't have to be so scared. What I did just now was... well, it was just a small prank. You guys are considered young even among humans, right? For me, all of you are nothing more than just babbling babies. While Noir continued in an entertained voice, Eugene and Christina shared a silent gaze. They weren't up against Noir's true body, which was quite fortunate. If Noir were here in person, they would never stand a chance with their current strength. They could attempt to tackle a battle against Noir's true body in many different ways, but only one conclusion was to be made. It was impossible for them to kill Noir right now. Even 300 years ago, this had been impossible for Hamel to accomplish alone, so it was only natural for this outcome to occur, especially since Noir had grown stronger since then. We could kill her if it's not her true body, but what's the point if we don't kill her true body? Eugene cooled his head and suppressed his murderous intent. Don't spread your wings. Anis thought similarly. The only silver lining was that she wouldn't be affected by forced slumber or one-rick cascade. Anis currently resided in Christina, and Anis was more than accustomed to Noir's attacks. Anis wasn't an ordinary existence by any means, and her mental strength far exceeded that of any normal humans. The same was true for Christina as well. With the two of them together, it was impossible for Noir to dig into Christina's dream. In fact, it wasn't an exaggeration to say that the hero's party from 300 years ago had successfully resisted Noir's attempts thanks to the presence of the saint. If Noir were allowed to break into Christina, she would realize the presence of Anis. Naturally, Anis did not want such things to happen, which was why she warned Christina to keep her wings folded. 8 wings would draw too much attention from anyone, including Noir. You're not scared, said Noir with a cheerful smile. Babies these days are very brave. Far from being intimidated by me, you feel anger and murderous will instead. Moreover, you're holding them in instead of expressing your emotions like a baby. Then, Eugene questioned, should I not feel anything after you've suddenly pulled your sword and attacked us? Come on. I told you, right? That was just a small prank. Think of it as a cultural difference. Think of it as a difference between humans and demon folk. Besides, I wasn't really trying to kill you lot, answered Noir with a giggle. She pointed at Dior, who was buried half in the snow. Even this young knight, right? I could have easily killed him when he got in the way of my surprise attack. I could kill him even now if I wanted. He's sleeping without a care in the world, so if I took my sword and just... Noir suddenly raised her voice and swung her sword. I could just kill him. But I didn't, right? That's why I'm saying it's only a prank, a joke. I guess humans might think it's a bit extreme, but it's nothing more than a harmless prank for me. Her sword had stopped millimeters in front of Dior's neck. Noir giggled before tossing her sword behind her. Were you offended? She asked. Eugene didn't respond but instead focused on keeping alert while glaring at Noir. After a brief moment of silence, Noir shrugged. My. Kids these days lack a sense of humor. In this age of peace, there's no reason for me to ambush and kill the children of the Lionheart clan, is there? If I did that, it would be disastrous. And is the Princess of Shimuan okay? Eugene rebuked. I didn't kill her, did I? This princess tried too hard to live up to the expectations of others. She trained hard without even sleeping, but honestly her skills are only so-so. I wouldn't go so far as to say she's bad, but she's honestly not talented enough to be revered as the Princess Knight, said Noir. She raised her limp hand and touched her cheek. What a waste of her youth and appearance. I wish she could live in moderation and enjoy her life instead of obsessing so much about the sword. Do you understand what I'm talking about? I didn't attack this princess. I helped her. I guess it can't be helped since she's like this by nature, but isn't it sad that she can't even sleep properly? It's not that she can't sleep. She didn't seem to like it, Eugene commented. It's because she has so much fear. Well, did I go too far with my joke? I simply showed her a few dreams, but she freaked out and didn't want to sleep. It wasn't even that bad of a nightmare either, Noir replied cheerfully. You're quite the foul one, aren't you? Said Eugene with a twisted smile. You dug into Princess Scalia's dream and took control of it because you knew we couldn't act carelessly against the Princess of Shimuan. Jokes are only fun when they're foul. It would have been even more entertaining if you had hurt this princess with your sword. I'm only kidding, only kidding. Just a joke. Please don't glare at me like that, Noir said with a wave of her hand. She then asked suddenly, Do you know who I am? The Queen of Night Demons, answered Eugene. How did you know? This is no fun. I was going to introduce myself with a solemn expression, but now you've ruined it for me. I had a rough idea when I saw Princess Scalia not wanting to sleep. Not that I expected it to be the Queen of the Night Demons herself, said Eugene. Should I say you have good intuition? Or a rich imagination? Or is it as expected of a lion heart? Noir stared at Eugene with glowing eyes. That's right. I'm Noir Giabella, the Queen of Night Demons. Do you know what this name represents? Do you really know who I am? I can do anything. Targeting Princess Scalia? It's just a joke. Attacking you lot? Another joke. I couldn't really consider this an attack. What about the fact I didn't dig into your dreams? Noir's smile disappeared in an instant. It's because the name of Lionheart is more respectable than Shimuan, that puny country on the far side of the sea. The founder of the Lionheart clan, Vermouth Lionheart, was a horrible man to me but also someone deserving of awe. So I respect his descendants. Likewise, I respect you who continue Anis Slywood's the Saint's legacy. Even without a smile, Noir's eyes were still glistening as if they were the countless stars in the sky, and when her gaze turned to Christina, Christina unknowingly grabbed the flail on her waist. Disregarding Christina's action, Noir continued with her self-righteous explanation. Well, it's really just a joke and a greeting for me. Why did I target Princess Scalia? Well, unfortunately my true body is in Helmuth. I'm here now using a low-level incubus, but wouldn't it be embarrassing to show myself in such a pitiful body? That's why I dug into the princess dreams. The queen and the princess. If I concede quite a bit, it's just about right, isn't it? A greeting? Asked Eugene while cocking his head to the side. Noir once again wore a bright smile and clapped. That's right, a greeting. But don't you like it? Whatever your intention was, it's still true that you tried to force us to sleep and harass us in our dreams, Eugene pointed out. Oh, what do you mean harass? Look around. Nothing but white and wind everywhere. Isn't it more fun to enjoy ourselves in a nice place made in our dreams instead of this desolate place? That's what I wanted to do, Noir said cheerfully. You attacked the Princess of Shimuan, the Lionheart family, and the Saint Candidate of Urez, Eugene said bluntly. So you want to make this a political issue? Don't be so fastidious. Do you really think you can threaten me, a Duke of Helmuth, with something like this? It would do you no good to offend me. Noir's smile remained unshakable. He was right. There was nothing to be gained, and Eugene did not want to create an enemy out of Noir Giabella just yet. The same was true for Anis, who was watching the situation unfold through Christina. You're right, Eugene agreed. It felt like thorns were growing in his mouth and he had swallowed pieces of a blade. Even so, he forced himself to nod in agreement. I have no intention of making this a political issue, though I can't say the same for Shimuan's princess. You don't have to worry about that. This princess and that knight will think of everything as a dream. Nothing will happen as long as you can convince those cute sleeping babies behind you. By the way, are you going to keep upsetting me? Noir asked with a pout. What are you talking about? Asked Eugene. You really don't know? Do you not know how much your blunt attitude is hurting me? Said Noir in a dejected tone. Her expression changed once more. Tears filled her eyes as if she were genuinely sad, and after a few blinks, tears started streaming down Scalia's cheeks. Why don't you tell me your name? Eugene just continued staring at Noir. Ah, of course I know who you are. But even if I know who you are, I want to hear it from you directly. I told you my name, didn't I? Rather than answering, Eugene made a slight movement with his hand inside the cape. But that was it. He did not pull his hand out. This was one of the greatest advantages of the Cloak of Darkness. As long as he kept his hand inside the cloak, even the Queen of the Night Demons would not know which weapons Eugene would take out. Are you going to take out Altair? Noir guessed. Don't think about hiding it. I know that you are the master of Altair, the Holy Sword. It's one of the reasons why I came all the way to this cold land. So, is there any reason to keep talking to me? Asked Eugene. Wow, you're really blunt. Is it because you're Vermouth's descendant? You really are similar to him in how blunt you are. A need to continue our conversation, you say? Of course there is. I still haven't heard you say your name. Eugene Lionheart, spat Eugene before Noir could finish. Noir did not react immediately and simply stared at Eugene. After blinking a few times, she giggled. Do you hate me that much? I don't think I've done much to be hated by you. Hee hee, do you know that your hatred and determination only stimulate me more? Noir began walking towards Eugene at a leisurely pace. From a long time ago, I was attracted to strong-willed people who show contempt for me. I want to dig into their dreams and see their bare bottom. I want to drive them crazy with pleasure that only I can give. Of course, I can do that in real life too, since I'm a night demon. Don't say such disgusting things, Eugene spat. Ah, that's a good reaction. It's fresh and cute. You're said to be Vermouth's second coming, but it was Hamel who hated me this much rather than Vermouth. You know who he is, right? The stupid Hamel, said Noir. As if he wouldn't know. Eugene quietly activated the white flame formula, and as a purple flame began to rise around him, Noir stopped in her tracks. This is beyond what I had imagined. I don't think I could have fun with you in this shoddy vessel and body, commented Noir. I don't intend to have fun with you, Eugene responded flatly. How cute. The light in her eyes snuffed out and the eyes lost focus before closing. Scalia's body fell straight forward, but Eugene's gaze lay elsewhere. Hiss. A substance resembling black fog emanated from Scalia's body. The fog mashed into a single point, and the night demon formed into existence before raising herself. Her face wasn't much different from what Eugene remembered from 300 years ago. Her rich hair came down to her ankles, her eyes twinkled like the stars in the sky, and a red horn grew from her forehead. I like you, Noir told Eugene with a smile. She raised her finger and pointed at Christina. The same goes for you, Christina Rogerus. With that robe and rosary around your neck, it really feels like I'm seeing Anise Slywood from 300 years ago. It's a pleasure to hear such an assessment from you, Christina answered. Right. My evaluation is a sure guarantee since I have known Anise since 300 years ago. You should take it as an honor and rejoice, Noir proclaimed. She wriggled her fingers and formed a small circle. Black mana clumped together to form 2 coins. It's a gift, she said. The coins flew toward Eugene and Christina and hovered in front of them. Naturally, they did not reach out. Soon, Giabella Park will be completed in Helmuth. With these coins. I don't need it, Eugene spat abruptly. Come on, don't be like that. Come visit, it'll be so much fun. No, actually, it hurts my pride to beg so much. If you don't want to, then don't come, Noir said sulkily. The coins fell from the air and dropped into the snow. I'm really going to go no, so I'll give you one last chance. If you ask me not to go. Go, Eugene cut in. Fine. I'm really going. But it feels a little disappointing now that I'm going to leave. Would you like to sleep with me before I go? Noir asked. Eugene's expression crumpled at her sudden suggestion. Christina glared at her with a pale face as well. That crazy wench. Anise also spat out harsh words without hiding her anger. Noir shrugged calmly despite the piercing, murderous eyes. Don't take it the wrong way. I'm asking in a completely formal way as a night demon. I'm just offering to show you your desires. Get lost, Eugene growled. All right. I'll really get going. Oh, but... It seems you didn't take so kindly to my joke and greeting, so I'll apologize in a way before I go. Noir's nails elongated like a sharp blade, and she placed her nails on her neck while giggling. This head may not be enough of an apology, but sincerity is the most important thing anyways, right? She sliced her own throat with a swipe of her fingertips. Whoosh! A torrent of crimson poured from the wound, and her half-lacerated head leaned sideways under its own weight. But Noir continued to laugh as blood flowed from her lips. She grabbed her head with her other hand and ripped it to the side. I hope to see you all in Helmuth one day, she whispered just before her head was completely torn off. The headless body thumped to the ground, and it wasn't long before the body changed. It was returning to its original appearance after Noir's departure. Eugene stared at the body without saying anything, and soon, the incubus body scattered and disappeared into the fog. Christina's lips moved busily in the silence, and a bright light swept their surroundings. She's gone, Christina declared. There was no sign of Noir in the vicinity. Christina crumpled to the ground with a long sigh, and her heart was beating rapidly. Her fear had won, and she was shaking uncontrollably. You did well holding yourself back. It was Anise who spoke after a moment of silence. She raised her head and looked at Eugene's back. I think it was fortunate in many ways that Noir Giabella did not come with her true body. Thanks to that, we realized how strong she has become in this era. That's right, Eugene easily agreed. I was nervous. I thought you might lose control and attack Noir Giabella. I know how to distinguish between when I should and shouldn't do that. I was like that 300 years ago as well. You weren't like that at first, Hamel. You were only able to develop self-control because of my education, Anise chastised. Maybe a little, Eugene agreed before looking down. He saw a black casino coin buried in the snow. In the center of the coin was the smiling face of Noir Giabella. You're right, Anise. It really was fortunate that we had the opportunity to see the gap between us and Noir Giabella. Eugene reached for the coin, and the flame of the white flame formula ejected from his fingertips and burned the coin without a trace. In the end, it was only a matter of time. Eugene would one day kill Noir Giabella. That's enough. Eugene laughed as he shook the blood from his palm. Chapter 227, Scalia 4. The first thing Seal saw when she opened her eyes was Eugene's face. She simply blinked a few times when she saw how his eyes, which appeared indifferent at first glance, contained subtle concern. Was I in the way? She spoke without thinking. She didn't know why she had been sleeping until now. Her memory had cut off at a strange place. She remembered how Princess Scalia attacked in a frenzy, how Dior blocked her, and how they had exchanged fierce blows with each other. Afterward, Dior had collapsed for reasons unknown, even though he had not suffered any cuts. Then Princess Scalia had raised her head and she didn't remember what happened afterward. Nothing. She tried her best to remember, but it just wouldn't come to her. No, you weren't, Eugene answered calmly. You're lying, Seal accused. She could see Cyan standing a little distance away when she turned her head. His eyes were bloodshot and he was staring at the far side of the snowfield. She could see how his jaw and neck muscles were flexed because of how hard he was clenching his teeth. Seal knew exactly what her brother was feeling right now, and she could sympathize with it. The two of them were twins, and they had been born into the prestigious Lionheart family. The two were quite talented and skilled. The only problem was that they had been born into an era together with a monstrous talent. If they had been brought up normally without rushing and had never been caught up in unexpected, impossible events. You don't need to be considerate, said Seal as she stood up. The phantom rain sword Javel, which she had been holding right before she fell asleep, was resting in its sheath and hanging on her waist. Seal couldn't help but laugh at the sight. Showing that kind of consideration only hurts me more. It's fine. I already know how ridiculously strong you are. She had stubbornly insisted on crossing the snowfield with Eugene, never imagining that something dangerous would take place. After all, what could possibly threaten them? An ambush of monsters? That couldn't be considered a threat, could it? Seal and Cyan were sitting at 4 stars of the white flame formula, and even throughout the Lionheart's long history, not many had reached 4 stars at the age of 21. This was an undeniable fact. It meant that they could pride themselves on how strong they were. So they mistakenly presumed their safety. Even forgetting the fact that Eugene was a literal monster, this journey couldn't pose much of a threat to them. If a monster stood in their way, Seal could simply swing her sword in his stead. She had been looking forward to hearing obvious compliments from Eugene like, "Wow, you've improved a lot." "Wait a minute," Eugene called out. Seal felt disgusted by herself. She knew exactly what kind of expression she was adorning now, but she couldn't possibly predict her next change in facial expression. She wasn't familiar with what she was feeling, and the same was true for her expression as well. So Seal jerked around and turned her back to Eugene. "I'm pathetic." It had been sudden and unavoidable. It had been inevitable that Seal was absolutely useless and helpless in that situation, that she had collapsed too quickly, serving only as an obstruction or a hindrance to Eugene. However, the proud lady of the Lionheart clan did not want to accept the inevitable fact. Her pride was hurt and she felt absolutely humiliated. She knew it was impossible for her to get ahead of Eugene, but she didn't want to get in his way. Even if she couldn't stand proudly by his side, she wanted to keep pace with him from behind. But what was this? This was far from keeping pace with him. Instead, she had only gotten in his way. She couldn't stand herself for being so pathetic and weak. "Seal," Eugene called out. Unfortunately, Seal wasn't in a position to respond. She was so desperately trying to keep her wobbly lips under control that she didn't even want to answer him. She felt her eyes quivering and her vision blurring as well as her nose tingling. "Don't look at me. Don't even come near me," Seal managed to say while suppressing her sniffles. The more she thought about it, the more pathetic she felt. In fact, it was the first time in her life that she felt this miserable and helpless. Seal approached Cyan while snuffing the shivering of her shoulders. Cyan had opened his eyes a little earlier than her. He had already moved past the stage of despairing in humiliation and now was feeling enraged at his own weakness. Cyan removed his gaze from the other side of the snowfield and glanced at Seal's face. His sister was shedding tears with pursued lips. As her older brother, he wanted to say something to cool or comfort her heart, but he couldn't. He was the same as her, unable to part his lips. He knew that he would only cry out in anger if he relinquished control of his mouth. In the end, Cyan only patted his sister's shoulder without saying anything, but that was enough for his baby sister. Seal sobbed silently for a while, and Cyan quenched his sadness and anger while clenching his teeth. Eugene didn't say anything to the twins. Had they held him back? He didn't think so. It was essential to be mindful of who they had been against. Norgiabella, the queen of the night demons. She wasn't an opponent with whom a battle could be fought in the first place, and even Eugene himself had not attempted to fight against her. However, if they had been forced into a fight, Eugene couldn't have left Seal and Cyan unprotected, and Eugene didn't try to deny this fact either. Even if they did not share any blood, they were siblings who had known each other for nearly 10 years. Once the two of them somewhat regained their composure, Eugene explained what had happened. When the two heard about the Queen of the Night Demons, they couldn't do much but stare with their jaws wide agape. So, Duke Norgiabella of Helmuth took control of Princess Scalia's body to say hello. Yes. But it was all a joke? That's what she said anyway. Well, it feels like shit, but no one died, right? So it means that this really was just a joke for that crazy woman, nothing that could be considered significant. Eugene felt neither the heart to defend Norgiabella nor the right reason. But he had to state the facts. Yes, it had been an offensive, incomprehensible act, but for Noir, this had been nothing more than a playful greeting. She must have been quite curious about us. Why, the founder fought directly with the Queen of the Night Demons, and you two are set to become the next head of the Lionheart family as the direct descendants, said Eugene. You don't have to say such words to make me feel better. The Queen of the Night Demons was here to see you, Cyan said with a snort. The world knew Eugene as the second coming of the Great Vermouth, and there was no way Cyan was oblivious to this fact. He chewed on his lips while experiencing complicated emotions. So, Cyan said after taking a moment to cool himself off. Was Duke Giabella satisfied after seeing you? What? Asked Eugene. I asked if she was satisfied with you, repeated Cyan. He was staring at Eugene with calm eyes. Hidden deep beneath his gaze was a mixture of immaturity, humiliation from being disregarded, as well as resentment towards his own deficiencies. However, he was managing to hide his true, squirming emotions by taking on a dignified look. I'm not sure if she was satisfied per se, but she did say she liked me, Eugene answered smoothly. That's enough, said Cyan with a nod. It's better to gain recognition than to be ignored by an enemy of our great founder. That's a commendable thing to say, Eugene complimented in a rare fashion. Did I say something strange? Asked Cyan. No, you didn't say anything strange. Anyways, this event, well, I don't think there's a reason to tell anyone. No one was hurt and there's no need to let things grow out of our control, right? Said Eugene. Both Cyan and Seal nodded in agreement. They both were convinced that Noir Giabella was a maniac and that they could not possibly understand her with common sense. What about Princess Scalia? Asked Cyan. They had moved Princess Scalia and Dior to the side after they fell to the snow, but neither had yet to regain consciousness. We can't possibly leave them like this, right? They'll freeze to death if we do nothing. Then are you going to take them with us? Asked Seal. Why would we? Eugene asked. We can let them get to Lehane on their own while we go our own way and... No, Seal shook her head, interrupting Eugene. My brother and I will go with Princess Scalia. What? Eugene was dumbfounded. You're going to the Grand Hammer Canyon of Lehane Jar anyways, continued Seal. Her eyes were still red, but her voice was back to normal. She continued with a brave smile as if she had never cried in the first place. In the first place, it was you, not us, that His Majesty Amon-Ra recommended going to the Grand Hammer Canyon. To be honest, I'm already sick of this snowfield. I don't want to climb any more mountains without reason, nor do I want to go to this canyon. And training with you on the road. Unfortunately, she couldn't bear to lie about that as well and trailed off. After a moment of hesitation, she shrugged and laughed. Well, that wasn't too bad. But I would rather be relaxing my body and mind. Sleds and wagons sound quite nice. I wanted to travel like that while sipping on hot chocolate or coffee with you, but now I don't even care about that. I just can't wait to get to Lehane and get into that famous hot spring. Hey you. Before Eugene could start reprimanding her, Seal continued in a firm tone. I won't change my mind no matter what you say, and the same goes for my brother. So just tell me to do what I want. You're not worried about us, are you? It's fine. Even if Princess Scalia wasn't in her right mind, Sir Dior was all right, right? They must have been wandering the snowfield knowing the way to Lehane. Not knowing what to say, Eugene just stayed quiet. And even if something dangerous happens, it will be while we climb Lehane Jar, not in this snowfield. I don't want to get caught up in something like this again, and I don't want to get in your way either. Don't say stupid things, rebuked Eugene. I'm saying these things because I'm not stupid. I know my place. But do you feel sorry for me after hearing what I said? If that's the case, I hate it. I don't want to be pitied by you. Seal jumped off the ground with a snort. Then she approached Princess Scalia and Dior, who were still lying unconscious on the ground. How long are they going to sleep for? Shouldn't they get up on their own since we've waited this long? Let's carry them on our backs, Cyan said, standing up after Seal. Before Eugene could stop him, Cyan approached Dior and placed him on his back. Seal naturally followed suit and carried Scalia on her back. They'll eventually wake up once we get going. Eugene tried to dissuade them. Hey, why are you guys in such a hurry? Just wait until they wake up and... I don't want to be with you anymore because I feel embarrassed and humiliated, said Seal. When I see your face, I feel like pulling all of my hair out because of anger. Cyan chimed in, nodding. If you hold me back, I'll hate you for the rest of my life, spat Seal with bloodshot eyes. Eugene could find no words to speak. See you in Lehane, said Cyan before taking off. In the end, the two of them departed carrying Dior and Scalia. Eugene stood in place for a while, staring at their shrinking backs. Are you worried? The voice that interrupted him was in a rather sarcastic tone. Eugene turned to look at Christina. Judging from the crescent shape her eyes took in her smile, it was a niece. Of course I'm worried, responded Eugene. Is it because you experienced childhood once again after being reincarnated? Hamel, it seems to me that you are more humane than you were in our past life, said Anise. I was filled with compassion since my previous life, said Eugene. Well, I can't deny it. Anyways, I think it's a relief. Those twins don't hate you. They envy you, but they aren't jealous. Rather, they are there for you and want to be of help, said Anise. I know. I found that very cute and proud, so I taught them this and that, which is unlike me. However, Cyan and Seal are still too young. I don't think age matters much. All of us were quite young 300 years ago. With a faint smile, Anise traced the holy symbol in the air. Of course those twins are different from us. We were just as young as them, but we were born different and experienced different things. But Hamel, surprisingly, humans are quick to adapt and change. If a few non-trivial opportunities present themselves and if they have the will to move forward, then humans can cause miracles. Just like we did. Eugene listened silently as Anise continued. Hamel, you spent your childhood with those twins, but with the memories of your past life, you couldn't have shared the same experiences with the twins at the same young age. That is why you have been treating them like children all along, said Anise. That's right. No, but they are no longer children. They want to stand on their own and they don't want to rely on others. Those twins possess the will to do so, and they clearly felt angry at failing to help today. They despised themselves for being weak. What they experience today and what they've experienced thus far, the emotions they feel with each event will act as a turning point for them. Anise concluded her explanation. She wasn't only talking about Seal and Cyan either. It was also meant for Christina, who was quietly listening on the other side of consciousness. It was the same for Christina. She also was forced to come to terms with her bitter weakness, and she also desired to use it as a spring to overcome further hardships. If you cross the river of death, Eugene said after a long sigh. He stood up before continuing. If you survive at the brink of death, if you continue to struggle to survive, even at the cost of having to kill others, then yes. It'll temper a person and make them stronger. Anise, you and I know this fact all too well because we lived in those times. Yes, that's true. But the time we live in now is peaceful. If it's possible. Oh, you're right. I am still treating Cyan and Seal like children. But if possible, I would like them to live out their lives in this peaceful era without having to dance with death, continued Eugene. That's your selfish desire, replied Anise. She was adamant in this respect. We do not choose the era we live in, and it's not something we can change as we wish. As humans, we are weak and light. We have no choice but to go with the grand scheme of things, the bigger flow. In particular, those twins are the descendants of Sir Vermouth. As long as they bear the name Lionheart, they have no choice but to stand at the forefront of the turbulent times. Eugene couldn't deny her words. Whether they choose to walk the tightrope with death or whether they choose to abandon everything and run away is not a matter for you to decide, Hamel. The fate of man must be his own and his alone, said Anise. They might cry out because they don't want to but still get caught up in things they didn't want, retorted Eugene. If they don't want to get caught up in things, they can simply run away. If they choose to get caught up in compromises and their own stubbornness, it's also something they need to deal with on their own, answered Anise. What you say sounds like self-torture, commented Eugene. Then you heard right. 300 years ago I did not take my destiny as my own. I did not run away, but I didn't want to go forward either. I was stupid and I couldn't disobey the orders of the Holy Empire, which was cleverly disguised as the will of light. I was stupid. I saw countless deaths, thoroughly experienced my own weakness and unspeakable horrors, and despised myself for not running away, Anise said before rising to her feet. She smiled while looking down at Hamel, who remained seated. But in the end I was the one to make the final decision. I chose to follow Sir Vermouth of my own volition. By my will I crossed the Devildom with you, Sienna, Molan and Sir Vermouth. And by my will I took my life. I was able to change like that because of meaningful events and the will to act. It was because of these things. And you walked the shore of the river of death many times as well, Eugene reminded her. Yes, that's right. Anyways, what I want to tell you is simple. If you really care for your siblings, do not treat them like children. Please respect their willingness to act, concluded Anise. It's been a long time since I last heard one of your lectures. Eugene stood up with a bitter smile. He turned his head but could no longer see Cyan and Seal. But Anise, when you dance with death too many times you become strange. You break. When that happens you take care of them as much as you love them, the same way we did 300 years ago. Do you remember, Hamel? When we crossed the sea and defeated demonic beasts and a legion of demon folk, you could not sleep at night with so many corpses and the stench of blood. That wasn't just me. All of us were the same back then except for Vermouth, that bastard. We could calm our quaking hearts because Sir Vermouth remained resolute. We relied on each other and held each other in place to ensure no one broke down. Hamel, don't think too hard about this. There was a slight change in Anise's smile. She grinned at Eugene with both her lips and eyes before continuing. You just have to become a figure like Sir Vermouth for the twins. Fuck, don't say such disgusting things, retorted Eugene. You don't have to be shy. You secretly admired Sir Vermouth, didn't you? Teased Anise. When have I ever? Shouted Eugene. Don't deny it now. It's nothing to be ashamed of, is it? It wasn't just you but all of us who admired Sir Vermouth, said Anise. No. Not me. I never admired that bastard. To me, Vermouth was a rival you wanted to overcome one day. Isn't it more embarrassing to say such things with your own mouth? Interrupted Anise. I'm not embarrassed. For me, Vermouth was. I didn't like that he was so much better than me at everything. So, I was furious that I wanted to knock him down a peg or. Stop. I feel like my hands and feet are shriveling up just listening to you. How can you say such cringy things without having anything to drink? Anise interrupted him once more. Shut up. I'm not ashamed. It was a lie. His face and stomach were burning as if he had downed an entire bottle of strong alcohol, and to be honest, he wanted to rip off his snout. Are you really not embarrassed? Well then, how about this? Said Anise with a grin before approaching Eugene. Then she stretched out her hand and caressed Eugene's chest. By my will I followed Sir Vermouth. By my will I crossed the Devil Dome with you, Sienna, Molan and Sir Vermouth. By my will I took my life at the end. What are you doing? You're repeating what you said earlier. And by my will, Hamel, I loved you. Eugene felt his face reddening. It felt as if his head was going to explode. He panicked and jumped back, and Anise giggled after seeing Eugene's tomato-red face. Sister. What about it? I'm saying this on my own will. Or, Christina, would you like to take advantage of this moment and take the courage to speak your heart? I'm not. As if. Anise enjoyed teasing Christina more than anything. I also like Sir Eugene by my own will, said Mare after poking her head out of the cloak of darkness and peering up at Eugene. But I love Lady Sienna. And Lady Sienna, continued Mare. Stop, little lady. You shouldn't say such things in her place. It will be more enjoyable to see Hamel's reaction when Sienna says it herself, Anise said with a giggle. Shut up. Eugene suddenly raised his hand and slapped his burning cheek. Mare's jaws dropped at this sight. Have you gone crazy? She shouted. Abel. Eugene called. Woof. Eugene ignored the tingling pain in his cheek and ran forward. Abel responded in kind and barked vigorously before charging forward. To the Grand Hammer Canyon. He could hear Anise giggling behind him.